Good morning, everybody, from a very, very frosty Winchester this morning. Welcome to Ask the Experts, an award-winning daily series from 8:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. to help small business. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments of the live feed. If you need any more advice, join the official Intuit QuickBooks SMB community group on Facebook. Accountants and business experts are on hand 24/7. During the live session, we'll be running a poll, so please engage with it, and I will reveal the results at the end. Morning, everyone. Once again from Winchester. My name is Sean Goldsmith. I'm the co-founder of a company called Grow Global, and we help local companies grow national and national companies grow international through the power of franchising. And I'm also recently the founder of a thing called the Franchising Academy, which is an international franchise training company, which launched last week and went very, very well. But this morning, what I want to do is I want to talk to you guys about one of the subjects that we haven't really covered. So as you know, I've done quite a few of these talks now, and we've been speaking about the business. We've been speaking about franchising. We've been speaking about why franchising is a successful model. And then, of course, we've been answering loads and loads of different questions from the audience with regards to that. But what I wanted to cover this morning was actually something which is a bit of the secret formula of franchising. In respect to the reason that the franchisees tend to be very, very successful in local areas. Now, remember, a franchisee is not like a branch, right? So it's not like a branch network. If we were talking about, I don't know, a Next store or one of those big sort of organizations where there's local branches of the same store, right? So you still got the central head office. The thing with the central head office is all the money that sort of comes in from the local areas goes back into the head office, and then it goes off to wherever the head office wants it to go to. So that might be to their head office, which might be overseas. It could be a number of different places, right? So fundamentally, a franchise in a local area is a small business, right? They are living in the area. They are sending their kids to school in the area. They are buying houses in the area. They're doing all those kind of things that any other small business would do, right? The only big difference is what they did is they invested heavily into the brand, into systems, into processes to be able to get them to their goal quicker, right? So this is a lot of the reason why people buy into franchises. Now, why is it that franchises, when they go into areas, right, tend to do much better, much quicker than any of the other local competitors? Well, marketing is one of them, right? So it's the formula in particular that we're talking about over here for marketing. Because what franchises do is they have got this magic thing, which is called a network. So over time, what happens is they are able to take a look at all the local marketing and all the PPC and all the Facebook and all the Instagram and all the social, right? And they're able to analyze it and then distill it into the things that worked and didn't work, right? So what happens is a local franchisee starts, and let me just tell you, typically a franchisee is a person who has absolutely no experience in a particular field when they start, whether it be children's entertainment or whether it be a burger joint or whatever it might be. They typically haven't got experience in that, right? In the majority of cases. So, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing because franchisors, typically what they're looking for is somebody who's teachable. So they don't want somebody who's going to have made burgers their whole lives, right? And then when they finally buy this franchise, start telling the franchisor how to make a burger, right? They want people who are going to just follow the system and make sure that they make the perfect burger time after time after time. And this is a good thing. It's not a bad thing at all because it's accelerated learning, remember. So what they have is they have a whole bunch of people around them and they're being taught the exact right way to do a certain thing. As I said, whether it be children's dance classes or, secondhand car sales, it doesn't matter. But the marketing itself is very, very, very important because franchises don't work if the franchisees don't do local marketing, same as any other business. But what the franchisor will do is they will say to the franchisee, listen, these are the activities that you need to take part in, right? These are the things that you need to do. And the vast majority of your clients and of your business is going to come from your own effort. So it's not as if the head office is sat there kind of delivering all of the business, etc. In almost all cases, the franchisor might deliver one lead for every 10 that the local franchisee gets together. But the franchisor always got this formula, right? And they know out of their own experience running their own business and then the subsequent franchisees what works and what doesn't. So I'm going to talk about Winchester as an example, right? If a franchisee was to locate themselves here in Winchester, it's a very interesting town in that it doesn't necessarily comply with the rules of the neighboring towns in terms of generating business. But the franchisor, if it was a children's activity sort of sector, franchisor would typically have a mix of old traditional marketing and then new modern social media and PPC marketing, right? Many don't. And let me just tell you that the guys who don't have a mix of traditional marketing and the online marketing, they do that at their direct detriment. And let me explain why. So many years ago, I had a network of franchisees, and there were about 20 of these franchisees in the whole network, right, that were spending almost exactly the same amount of money, right? Half of them were spending only on PPC, Facebook ads, etc. And the other half were kind of mixing it up a bit, right? So they were doing a bit of local marketing, those local glossy magazines, leafleting, etc., etc., etc. And then they were spending about half of what the other guys were on PPC. So let's just, for argument's sake, call it £1,000 was being spent across these 20 guys. 10 of them were spending £1,000 on all of their paid advertising online, and 10 of them were spending, a mix, half about. What was really, really interesting when we were looking at this, now bearing in mind in a franchise, you've got a baseline, right? So you've got people who are working under the same brand, who are doing the same stuff. The marketing is coming from the head office. So there's no variation really in what was happening between those guys. Slight variation on territory, but not really. The only variation was what they were choosing to spend on their marketing. Anyway, turns out that the guys who were spending half on PPC and on Facebook advertising, etc., in terms of digital marketing, were getting almost double the leads of what the guys were that were spending all their money on PPC and Facebook, right? So this didn't make sense to me at all. I was like, well, hold on, what's going on here? Anyway, so we started looking at it. We started delving into it, and we were figuring out, we were trying to look at the guys who were spending on their local marketing, and it really was quite a mix, right? It was leaflets, it was glossy magazines, it was Parish Magazines, it was the vehicles that were driving around and all these kind of things, right? And it turned out that actually the thing that was very, very obvious, but we were missing, was the fact that the rules of marketing still apply. The rules of marketing that existed 50 years ago, right, are still the rules from today. So what do I mean by that? Well, back in the day, they used to teach you that you needed to have an integrated marketing approach, right? You needed to take multiple marketing channels, right, and split them up, and you want to try and get as many touches as possible. Now, remember, the rules used to be 7 touches, right, for consumers to buy. With social media marketing, all the stuff just chucking at people. Some people would suggest that it's about 30 touches that you need before you actually get somebody to buy. Now, 30 touches is tough, right? What we started seeing with these franchisees who are doing leaflets and magazines and everything, right, was the touches they were making in the old school way in the magazines were more powerful than the touches of a display ad on Google, right? When people held it in their hands, right, it was more powerful than when they saw it on the screen. In fact, they probably didn't even see it on the screen. So what was happening is the people were looking at the local marketing, they were seeing the vehicles drive by, they were then getting, some Facebook ads and PPC, etc., right? And all of a sudden, the touches were not only happening quicker, but the touches were more powerful on the old traditional marketing side. So these guys were getting more leads from their Google by spending less money on their Google, right? Which was fantastic. Anyway, now, that's just one example of what franchisors do. The other thing is simplification, right? Because any small business, whether it's a franchisee or a normal sort of DIY business, every single one of them are going to go and try and find the formula for marketing, right? So this one thing that works and that one thing that works. The very unfortunate thing is many, many marketing companies out there, even the successful ones, right, do not fundamentally understand local marketing because, not their fault, it is just purely because they work with such a variety of different businesses, right? So it'll be different sectors, big businesses, small businesses, all that kind of thing. And franchisors do have an advantage in that we've got that baseline. We've got 40, 50 people doing the same thing that we can look at. But what franchisors found was that if we go and we just say, look, do some local marketing, do this, do that, do the next thing, what was happening is people would only kind of focus on the one thing that was delivering leads. So what I mean by that, well, what they forgot was the touches. The touches, right? They forgot that the Parish Magazine might not give you a direct lead that you can say, hold on, this business came from the Parish Magazine. But what it does do is it contributes to the adverts coming through Google. So what's happening is the guys were then over time moving more and more to Google because they thought that that's where the leads were coming from. So what we did is we created a document similar to this, right, for the franchisees. Now, any of you guys, if you want to use this, it is genius. It is one of the best marketing strategies you'll ever come across in your life. And it simply does this, right? It puts over here on the left-hand side, it puts on the right-hand side, it puts all of the different marketing activities that you might want to use, right, in a local area. So over here, just as an argument, we've got leaflets, PPC, paid social media, local networking, public relations, strategic alliances, image of the vans, the uniforms, direct sales, mail and phone strategy, cross sales, e-marketing, and shopping centers, right? Now, all of these things are individual activities that a franchisee might be able to take part in. But what we do is we would take 2 or 3 of these, right, and make them compulsory. So 2 or 3 of these things would be the things that the franchisee must absolutely kind of do during the month, right? And as a franchisor, what we will do is we'll monitor that, right? And then the rest of the things are variables which would suit the local area. So this was a stroke of genius, and it really, really sort of helped a lot of franchisees up the game because it became very, very simple. They knew I must do these things because these things will definitely, generate business. And in order to boost these things, what I need to do is I need to use a combination of the others. It's very, very, very simple, very, very effective. And we started seeing increases in sales of 20, 30, 40% for franchisees. So, if you are running your own small business at the moment, right, I would highly, highly suggest that what you do is you actually do start developing a integrated marketing sort of plan, that is completely focused on getting multiple different activities, some of which you don't negotiate on in your own mind, right? So I would say, you've got to do Facebook and PPC, right? The reason you've got to do those 2 is because Facebook in this modern day and age, right, is a learning channel for people, right? And this is what we found. A lot of times people go into Facebook and Instagram to get an idea as to the kind of company that you are, the culture of company that you are. This is why we have discovered that, doing all business posts is not a great idea on Facebook or Instagram, right? You've got to put some, just personal posts in there. Don't worry about the spelling. Don't worry about the grammar. Don't worry about anything like that. Just be yourself, right? And so anyway, so Facebook and Instagram are the research channels on the culture and the type of company that you are. Once somebody has actually been impacted by your magazines and your leaflets and your everything like that, and your Facebook and your Instagram or Pinterest or something like that, right? What happens is they shoot over to Google because Google is a buying intent channel, right? So what we found is once people are ready to buy, what they do is they've done all their other stuff, in the different marketing channels. They then jump over to Google and they'll just type in your company name, right? Or they'll type in what you do and kind of look for you. So this is where your SEO, your PPC, and also your Google My Business is so crucial. You've got to be there ready and waiting for when the customer comes. But remember, we were talking about this whole mix, right? So we've got this integrated marketing approach, all these guys or whatever. Now imagine you've done all this work, you've done all this all the bits and pieces, right? And the customer then still just types in gutter specialist in Winchester, right? And you happen to be a gutter specialist. It is important that you're in the PPC, right? It is important that you are in the maps. And it is also important that you're in the SEO. But remember, you might not be the number 1 in either of these spots, right? And this is where all the other activity comes in, because as it happened 50 years ago, right? People will choose the brand that they know and they trust, right? So even if there are 2.5 million different options on Google, If they recognize your name, they've got a warm, fuzzy feeling about your name because they've seen you in the Parish Magazine, they've seen you here and here and here, and they've seen your vehicle driving around the place, right? Then they are going to choose you, right? Because they are still faced with a choice, even though it's Google, right? In fact, with Google, they've probably got a choice of about 10. So you've got 3 or 4 at the top, you've got 3 or 4 in the maps, and then you've got 3 or 4 in the SEO's kind of range. So, really, really take this in and understand that this is part of the reason why franchises, when they sit down in an area, they fly, right? They fly. They fill up their classes quickly. They get their clients back. Typically, like most service-based franchises, they probably see a return on investment within 6 to 8 months. And this is one of the reasons that they're doing that. Anyway, guys, I'm going to pop over to questions if that's okay. First in line is Lauren on Facebook Messenger. I've launched my own limited business and wondering if I should take out a business credit card. I've been using a debit card to cover business costs at the moment. What's the difference? Lauren, actually, this is probably more of a question for your accountants, just, for obvious reasons. But look, the fact is that the costs on a debit card are usually, 20p or something like that per transaction, and the credit card, it's a credit card. You're gonna have an interest rate that's probably a lot higher unless you're on one of those 0% credit cards. So, if you've got a business and you're running it, I don't think that there's going to be much of a difference. We don't use credit cards at all in our businesses. We only use debit cards. We signed up to things like Starling and Revolut and those kind of guys. But that's just personal choice. So I definitely have a word with accountants. Or what you can do is you can contact QuickBooks, because they've got business experts and accountants ready and waiting for you. So that's a bit of advice, I think, just on that one. Abdullah on Twitter DM, have you ever sold a business? And if so, what are the signs that it's time to sell your business? Abdullah sold many businesses, right? Both franchise networks as well as helping individual franchisees sell their businesses. Look, selling a business is a funny old thing, right? It is something that everybody thinks is easy, but in fact, it takes a lot of planning and it takes a lot of focus, because how you run your business is going to affect how you sell your business. And what do I mean by that, right? What I mean is that if you are, as an example, you've got some advice from your tax accountant, or you yourself have chosen to do this. If, say, for instance, you've decided to take more of a dividend than a salary, right? When you come to sell your business, the buyer, will be like, well, hold on a second, you hardly took salary over here and blah, 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 blah. They're not interested in your dividends, right? What they're interested in is your actual turnover, your actual staffing costs, and, those kind of things. So, often the guys who get the highest multiples are the guys who actually just put themselves on a salary, etc. But the signs are basically, you've probably just given me a sign right now. The fact that you're asking the question means that you're thinking of exit. You just need to figure out whether or not that exit is a planned exit, and this is part of your strategy, is to build up the business and then sell it on, or it's just simply that it's just not your thing anymore, right? And you need to you want to try something different. And we've had all those variations in the franchising world, right? So sometimes people build up an absolutely fantastic business. Often they're surprised at what they can get, because selling a business nowadays, you have to look at your EBITDA, right? Your earnings before tax, depreciation, and amortization. There's a whole bunch of things over there. Speak to the accountants about that. But you look at your EBITDA, and typically for a franchise, they would make about 2.5 to about 3 times their EBITDA, right? So often people will say, well, I've got a £1 million business, I'm going to sell it for 10 million. And they get an offer for 200,000. That is why. So, I think the last bit of advice I would give to you is definitely use a broker, right? Some great franchise brokers that do business sales, companies like Transworld. There's another company called Franchise Resales. But if you go and speak to a broker, definitely use a broker. Let them take you through the process, because trust me, the likelihood of you getting a better sale through a broker is much higher, and we always do that. Hope that answered the question, Abdullah. Right, Justin on Facebook Messenger. When operating a franchise, what's the best way to ensure all franchisees are following the brand guidelines? I want to make sure that they have enough space to come up with their own tailored assets And that also saves on centralized resource, but often that means off-brand assets getting made. Justin, absolutely. You know, this is a perennial, challenge for franchisors, because you definitely want to have, some form of personalization for the area. But you are absolutely right that, what ends up happening is there's a lot of creativity in the branding, and you just can't have that. You know, as a franchisor, what you definitely want is you want to be able to control the brand. And this isn't actually for you, so much as it is for your network, because some creativity can be brilliant, right? And you can take that on board. But quite often it's very, very bad, because advertising is everywhere. It doesn't abide by the franchise territories. So we do quite a lot of stuff for franchisors, right? So in terms of marketing over here, social media and all that kind of stuff. And my best advice to you is basically build up a library, right? So tools like Canva nowadays are genius for this, right? So what you do is you build up a library of assets, you build up a library of templates, right? And you say to your franchisees, crack on with these templates, right? So they can go into Canva, they can take the template, change the words, do whatever they need to do, right? And put it out. But you create the library, right? What you can also do is, when it comes to live videos, when it comes to all of these kind of things, you've got to, in your brand guidelines, you've got to actually state very, very clearly what is appropriate and what is not. Also, what you need to do is you need to make sure that all your franchisees are actually sending it in for approval. And I know that's a bit of hard work, but trust me, it's well worth it, right? So as long as the franchisees can, just send you a screenshot or whatever, and just say to your team or to yourself, is this okay, right? Then absolutely, just do that, because what you also need to understand is they do want to do better, right? They're urged to do other marketing and everything like that. It's because they want to improve on their business, right? And they feel like they've got an insight that you might not as a franchisor, which is absolutely true. Sometimes it is absolutely true, but it is a learning process. So over time, if you are strict with your brand guidelines, they will come to know what the line is that they can't cross. And then they'll become creative within that. And weirdly enough, it's actually a more of a sense of freedom for the franchisees when you have that. But Justin, honestly, if you want to chat about it anytime, just contact me directly. I can give you some really, really good sort of outlines and guidelines for how to manage that whole process. It's actually not as difficult as it sounds. But anyway, right. I hope that answered the question. Holly on Instagram DM, I started selling homemade crafts during lockdown earlier this year and had an overwhelming number of orders. Awesome. I'm currently doing it all myself, but I think there's an opportunity for me to turn this into a business. How do I go about bringing somebody else on board? Are there any hidden costs I should be aware of? Holly, look, if you're doing this as just as an independent business versus a franchise, right? If you're just simply hiring somebody, I'm sorry, just a sec. Not promoting McDonald's, but it's a great franchise. Anyway, so what I would say, right, is when you're about to hire somebody, it's very, very much your mindset that needs to change, right? And I've helped literally thousands of businesses go through this, franchise businesses. So the big problem with owning your own business is that you are super dedicated, right? You're willing to work until 12 at night, 1 in the morning, whatever it might be, right? You are on it with customer services. Everything is there, and you're just doing it usually just fueled by sheer adrenaline, right? And fear, because, especially if you haven't run a business before, you want to get it right. You absolutely want to get it right. The big problem is that when you hire somebody, when you take somebody on board, what you often do is you often have expectations which are completely unrealistic for them. Because in many, many cases, especially if you're a small business, you end up paying that person more than you pay yourself, right? So it truly is an investment. But then what you do is you have this expectation that if you're paying this person, right, they need to be much better than you because they're experienced, or they're this or they're that, or they've been doing it for years or anything like that, right? And that is universally 100% never, ever, ever the case. And what happens is then you hire this person only is able to physically do half of what you do, or maybe 3/4 of what you do. And because your mindset is expecting them to be up here, what happens is you start feeling a little bit angry about the whole thing, right? And you're like frustrated, and you start thinking, why aren't they doing it? Let me just tell you, number one thing to understand before you hire this person, right? And there's a few other things, but before you hire this person, totally understand that if you get somebody who can do 60% of what you personally can do, you've got an outstanding person working for you, right? In the real world, that person is outstanding. Anything under 60%, you got to start, pushing them. But in reality, a 60% person versus the entrepreneur, right, is a 100% person in a normal organization, right? So just get your mindset ready for that. The second thing that I would say is in the ramp up, before you hire this person, right, you really need to chuck everything that you've got at your marketing and at sales. Even though you might be overwhelmed right now, you still want to just have like a little upward turn, in your marketing and sales. This might sound a little bit weird, but what happens is every single time somebody hires, you've got this little J curve that happens, right? Because your income plummets, your time that you're able to spend on the business plummets. You're focusing on training, you're doing all these kind of things, right? So what you want to do is you want to do a little bit of a ramp up so that when that inevitable plummet happens, right, it is much shallower than it would be if you just kind of cruised along and then allowed it to happen, right? You've got to have a plan. You've got to have sort of KPIs for yourself in terms of, look, this is how I'm going to train the person. This is what it's going to be, et cetera, et cetera. My advice, and again, this is something that very few people ever do, but the ones that do it, right, actually have great results. Even if you're a solo entrepreneur, right, go onto YouTube, create a Facebook group or something like that, right, and record everything that you do. So do a video recording saying, this is how we make this craft. This is how we make this. This is how we make this, right? And try and do a lot of that stuff before you hire the person so that when you hire the person, you can put them in front of a video, have them watch the video, and then your face-to-face training is going to be much more meaningful because you don't have to explain concepts and stuff, right? So you're accelerating your learning incredibly by doing it that way. And let me just tell you, Holly, in terms of homemade crafts, right, there's a franchise, I think it was called Pinewood. Oh, never mind. In America, right, handmade crafts. In the first year and a half that they franchised, they sold 250, I think, franchises like that because the crafts market is so appealing right now for that market. So if you ever want to chat about it or anything like that, give me a shout. I'll give you their URL when I remember it, and you can check them out. Anyway, right, Luke on Twitter DM. Every local area may have different marketing methods that work for them. Do you have any advice on how to figure out those local nuances when starting a business and you can't hire an agency? Yeah, Luke, listen, so it really depends on what you're doing, right? So I'm just going to pretend it's something that is small and, service-based or whatever. There's certain things that are always going to work in a local area, right? So the thing that most people underestimate and they don't ever do is leafleting. Right now, if you were to look through your letterbox later today, right, you have to take a look at how many leaflets are coming through the post box. Leafleting is incredibly cheap, incredibly effective, but there's a formula to this, right? And I learned this from Domino's Pizza many years ago. If you have 100,000 leaflets, right, distribute them in one area. Don't try and do every single part of the town. Don't try and land grab. Don't leaflet everywhere, right? Choose the area where your clients are most likely to be. And you can figure that out by looking at the local demographics and things. There's websites like Up My Street that'll tell you exactly who's in there, how many homeowners, age, all that kind of stuff, right? So all for free. So go and take a look at that. Leafleting is going to work if you are just starting as a business, right? Number two, networking. Network, right? There are hundreds of networking companies nowadays. And you can spend, go to the networking events 3 times for free or 2 times for free. I reckon that you could probably find enough networking companies in your area to be able to go to networking twice a week, absolutely for free without paying a single thing. If you are totally inexperienced in small business, right, I would highly recommend joining the Bni Network, right? So let me just tell you about Bni. Bni is very hard work. It is very strict. It is, it's a networking group that is all about you becoming the sales force for the other members of the group and then becoming the sales force for you. They've got a great attitude and everything, but it is strict and it's hard work and it's regimented and it is disciplined, right? For any business that's never done networking before, you could not possibly get a better education in terms of how networking should work, what the disciplines are of networking, and the strategies of networking than joining BNI. So all of the franchisees that we've ever spoken to, we always make BNI compulsory for 1 year, right? Because often people carry on with them, but many people move off, right? Because the other networking events are much more fluffy, much more nice, etc. But BNI delivers business. That's one thing that you could never ever take away from them. So I'm not a natural BNI person, right? I found it very, very, very hard work. It wasn't really, my kind of thing, but I definitely recognized how powerful it was. So if you do things like leafleting and BNI, you're already on the right track. The last thing that I would say, and this is also a secret source that franchisors often know, and very few other people do, Parish Magazines. So out of all the magazines that you could advertise in your business or your service, right? Parish Magazines are probably the most powerful, especially in terms of return on investment. Some Parish Magazines might charge you £5, right? They've only got a distribution of, say, 300 houses, if that. But the people that read them use them for local knowledge, local plays, all that kind of thing. One of the strategies that you can employ is you basically go and look for the top churches or top schools in your local area, right? Church of England schools. All of them will be associated with a church, and those churches generally have Parish Magazines. I've heard of people spending £5 on Parish Magazines and walking out with £30,000 contracts to redo lighting for a school, so very, very, very powerful. So, just those three things should get you business anyway, right? Whether or not you have a business card or a website or anything like that, if you just do the networking, spend 30 quid on leaflets and do some Parish Magazines, you'll get business. There's no doubt on that. Right. Okay, cool. Just swiftly moving on, because I think I'm probably running over. Naomi from Facebook Messenger. What's your opinion on franchisees having their own social media accounts for individual shops and then interacting with each other on social? They do it to drum up engagement and whatnot, but I worry it becomes a bit of an echo chamber and makes us look a little silly. Naomi, listen, so in a franchise, right, the only way to do social media is to do, in Facebook, say, for instance, they've got that parent-child relationship, right? Because in every single franchise network, you're completely right. They might be drumming up a bit of attention, but the reality is anything organic on Facebook, if you are able to sort of be seen in front of maybe 1% of the audience of your total followers, right, then you're already doing well. Some people have said it's as high as 3%. Others have said it's less than 1% of your followers will ever see any of the posts that you do, even if they are kind of helping each other. But you need to have a parent-child relationship in your Facebook, where as a franchisor you can do the main posting for the group, and then what you do is you, as I said before, you have a Canva account or something like that. And then you literally lay out for the franchisees, these are the posts that we're going to do. If you're going to do any posts, do them locally. Have a set process that you follow, and have rules that you give to your franchisees, just so that they know what it all is. Most importantly, with franchisees especially, the one thing I would say is often as a franchisor, people, it's not that they won't believe you, it's just that you are kind of the authority. And, when you are saying something over and over again, they find it very, very difficult to believe. I have this theory, it's called the Hairdresser Theory, and it has served me very, very well for many years. So I once had an argument with my mother-in-law about, I don't know, something silly like, whether or not gooseberry jam is good for you. And I said it wasn't, and she said it was, or whatever. And there was just no getting through that argument. But about 2 years later, and I remember this very clearly, she went to a hairdresser, and the hairdresser said exactly what I said, right? And she came back home telling everybody about this new fact that she'd learned. And it was exactly what I'd said before. So this hairdresser theory is basically when you have a situation with franchisees where they're not really listening to you, they're not taking it in, they're nodding politely but ignoring, right? Bring in a third party, bring in somebody else to come and explain it and explain the logic and explain what the effect is of what they're doing. You know, it's very, very powerful to do that. And I would highly recommend you go down that route. Anyway, right. So hope that helped, by the way. Well, okay, great. The poll results are in. And the question that we asked you was, has your business performed better in 2021 versus 2020 so far? 50% of you said better, 40% of you said about the same, and 10% of you said worse. You know what? That absolutely echoes what we've seen in the franchising world. You know, the records that are being broken at the moment, this friend of mine, Theo, who runs Swim Time, I mean, they had over 4,000 people on waiting lists, right? So they are breaking record after record every single month in terms of their sales. So yeah, that absolutely echoes what I've seen myself. Guys, thank you so much all for tuning in. If you want to get in contact with me, please feel free to email me directly on Sean, SEAN, at Grow Global. That's GROE global.com, or just simply visit growglobal.com. And coming up on Ask the Expert tomorrow is Zishan Masood, accountant and head of strategy at Morgan Reach Accounting. Tune in to hear his analysis of the autumn budget and find out how it will affect your business. A reminder that if you need any more advice, join the official Intuit QuickBooks SMB community group on Facebook. Accountants and business experts are on hand 24/7. I have really enjoyed answering your questions this morning. Have a fantastic day, and I apologize for running slightly over. Cheerio.